topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
What's working on purpose anyway? Each week, we ponder the answer to this question. People ache for meaning and purpose at work, to contribute their talents passionately and know their lives really matter. They crave being part of an organization that inspires them and helps them grow into realizing their highest potential. Business can be such a force for good in the world, elevating humanity. In our program, we provide guidance and inspiration to help usher in this world we all want, working on purpose. Now, here's your host, Dr. Elise Cortez.
Welcome back to the Working on Purpose program, which has been brought to you with Passion Enterprise since February of 2015. Thanks for tuning in again this week. Great to have you. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. If we've not met before and you don't know me, I am a workforce advisor, organizational psychologist, management consultant, logotherapist, speaker, and author. My team and I at Gusto Now help companies to enliven and fortify their operations by building a dynamic, high-performance culture, inspirational leadership, and nurturing managers activated by meaning and purpose. Many organizations are not aware of how critical it is to invest in developing their leaders and managers, not just for their own effectiveness, but also to avoid burnout and keep them fulfilled. And so that they can measure and monitor the purpose experience in their organization to keep it working as an operational imperative. So much you can actually do with purpose. And did you know that inspired employees outperform their satisfied peers by a factor of 2.25 to 1? In other words, inspiration is good for the bottom line. You can learn more about us and how we can work together at gusto-now.com or my personal site, elisecortez.com. Getting into today's program, we have with us Mitchell Levy. He's a global credibility expert, a two-time TEDx speaker, an international best-selling author of over 60 books, a certified stakeholder-centered coach, and an executive coach at Marshall Goldsmith's 100 Coaches. He's an accomplished entrepreneur who has created 20 businesses in Silicon Valley, including 4 publishing companies that have published over 750 books. He's provided strategic consulting to hundreds of companies and has been the chairman of a board of a NASDAQ-listed company. Today, we'll be talking about, among other things, his new concept of executive abundance. He joins us today from Cupertino, California, otherwise known as Apple Country. Mitchell, a hearty welcome to Working on Purpose.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me. I didn't realize I had a tongue twister bio, but you know.
Well, I have to say, I personally need a small nap before we get started after reading all that. Just a small one, a power nap, and I'm good.
Sleep, that's not a good way to start a show.
Yeah, just a little nap. No, you're going to laugh at this. I had a couple guys on that wrote a book on momentum. It was fantastic. And one of them said something about yawning on the show. And I said, that has never happened in the 10 and a half years that I've been hosting the show. And don't be the first one to do it. You either, Mitchell.
You tempted me.
Don't do it. Now, so we just first have to start with this idea here. I'm sure that in the decades that I've been walking the planet, that I have never before met a global credibility expert. So let's start with that.
So what's the question?
What is it? What is it? What does it do?
So what ended up happening I was a book publisher, sat on the board of a public firm, started a bunch of companies. And around the year 2019, I'm thinking, yeah, the book publishing market is slowly coming to the end. We've got Amazon bringing in and making books really a commodity item. And then COVID hit. I didn't realize this at the time. COVID just killed my publishing business. And so in 2019, I started on a Napoleon Hill journey. I interviewed 500 thought leaders on the concept of credibility.
Wow.
And I think after you do something like that, so pick a topic, anything you're particularly interested in, and start interviewing people. And it took me a year. I interviewed 500 people, and 2 things came out of it. One was, and I know we're on radio, so feel free to take a look, Google Mitchell Levy credibility equation. I'm going to share something This is the definition of credibility that came out of it. It's the quality in which you're trusted, known, and liked. And underneath each of those are 10 values. And so it took me a while to, even after doing all the interviews, it took me a while to sort of live in the new framework, the new culture, the new concept of credibility. One of my podcasts now is called Leaders Living Their Values. And the values are values of credibility. So when I interview, I'm just listening for and asking questions to go after the 10 values. So a global credibility expert is someone who can look at any company, any human, and quickly see things that they're doing which add credibility to who they are, and things that they're doing that take credibility away.
That's just gorgeous. And I love that idea of having one of my topics that I really care about and just go find people to interview. I love that idea. Oh, that's exciting right there. There's so many things we've already kicked off already. And I knew this was going to be really, really crunchy and chewy, and we're off already. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about your coaching. I can't imagine what it would be like on the other end of being coached by you. Profound changes happen on the other side of that, I'm sure. Can you say a little bit about why are you so compelled to coach, and how do you help
Interesting.
people?
By the way, I'll ask you politely, is starring with 2 R's or 1?
That's a good
It says
question.
guest starring Mitchell Levy. And by the way, it doesn't matter.
I don't know, actually.
Right? If it is 1, then that's really credible because we're authentically going live that way. I think what happens, and I love that we're on this show called Live Working on Purpose, or Live Working on Purpose. Sorry, actually both work, by the way. Not only should we live working on purpose, but we should be working on purpose. We exist in purpose. We should wake up every day and smile because we're doing what we feel like we are meant to do, and we're playing by our rules, not by somebody else's. Right. And so one of the things that I do, and this is true on everything. Let me tell you something that happened when I interviewed 500 thought leaders on credibility and came up with the definition. I also unraveled a superpower. And I wasn't sure. Maybe I always had it as a publisher. I sort of focused on the right topics. But when you interview 500 people and you focus on, and by the way, my superpower is clarity. I could sit with any company or any human and help them articulate where they're executing on their purpose in less than 10 words. Now, lots of people have different definitions for the word clarity. So I'm just going to say, I could sit with you and help you come up with what I call your CPOP, your customer point of possibilities.
Love it.
Right? And that represents, in less than 10 words, represents many things. It represents your compass. It represents as humans, we vibrate at a frequency. It represents the frequency that your body vibrates at. So to go back to your question, if you're being coached by Mitchell, the first thing that we do is, whether you're the CEO of an Inc. 5000 company or a business owner, first thing we do is we figure out, who are you, right? And who are you is represented by your CPOP. What playground are you playing in? And then the next question is, do you want to still continue to play in that playground? Typically, the answer would be yes. Or do we want to gravitate to something else? And most importantly is, how do we play in the playground that those around us are playing with us in the same playground? And I know that there was an analogy. It will make it really, really simple. If you're a parent and you're watching your kids play in the playground, you just want to make sure everyone plays fair, whatever that is. You know, if a really big kid comes by, you don't want him pushing your kid on the swings. You don't want the big kid sort of focusing on the seesaw. Other than that, if he's a nice kid or she's a nice kid, that's okay, right? So there are some general rules for playing in your playground. And when you're coached by me, we not only help define what those rules are for each person, but that person, typically the CEO, is going to be sharing those rules with their team. So the team has a culture and they can play by the same rules. And that makes really interesting thing. Now, can I add to that? Would you mind?
No, I don't want you to add to that. I'm kidding. You know that.
So there's sometimes things come out of your mouth and you go, yeah, there's two interpretations. One interpretation of rules are black and white. You either go left or you go right. Another interpretation of rules are more like rules, which are guidelines, right?
Suggestions.
Right. So for me, my thought process is if you're the CEO of the company, the best thing you could do is empower your team to also know the playground they're playing in. So every person on the management staff has their own CPOP. Now they understand the corporate CPOP, and their CPOP their customer point of possibilities has to fit in the corporate CPOP. If it doesn't, by the way, it's time for them to leave.
Yeah.
And as the CEO, you have to be really clear. Hire slow, fire fast. One of the best things I ever learned by running 4 different CEO networking groups. It's hire slow, fire fast. And if you recognize at some point in time that you're playing on a particular playground and there are people in your team that are toxic to that playground, and they're managing others, they got to go.
Absolutely. Yeah. I got to believe, okay, so this is perfect for us to talk about. I got to believe that anybody who's listening or watching this podcast today is going, clarity. Ooh, that sounds really good right about now. There's so much going on in the world where people are like upside down and backwards, don't know which end is up, et cetera. So I would think that clarity would be something that people are just clamoring for. Yes? Is your phone ringing off the hook?
You mind if I go, sort of. So
Okay.
Here's what's interesting. I spent a year understanding what credibility was. I then created a business helping to deploy credibility and spent 3.5 years, created a nice 6-figure business and spent 3.5 years deploying credibility. Now, it wasn't a change the world business. It was just, made good money, had fun, leisure type business. But now that I've done this research, I want to put in the marketplace something that would allow us to live in a better way. The TEDx I did, if you want to look at it, is called We Are Losing Our Humanity. And I'm tired of watching it happen. And so what's interesting is if we live credibly and just exude the values of credibility, we'll be more humane. So 3.5 years went by. I go, yeah, this is not a change the world business. Let's try something else. This clarity thing, I'm really good at that. Let's create a clarity certification program. So I created the clarity certification program. Once again, grew it really quickly to a 6-figure business. And 7 months ago, I had a friend of mine, have to be careful about how I say slap me in the face, virtually slap me in the face. So it was a guy by the name of Ken Cook. I'll name him. And Ken gets on the phone with me and he says something really interesting. He goes, Mitchell, I know every living marketing legend alive today, and there's nobody who knows clarity like you. Like my head got really big. He then says, Mitchell, remind me how many people don't have it. So based on the research, 98% of people don't have clarity.
I could buy that.
He then says, Mitchell, I'm going to say something you don't like. Okay, so he starts the conversation. My head's really big. And then he says he's going to say something I don't like. And I couldn't imagine what it would be. And what I want you to visualize, if you're visualizing a balloon, you're at a birthday party, you're visualizing a balloon, and then you take a pin and you stick it in the balloon, what happens? It pops like immediately. There is no balloon. So that's what he did to my ego. In 2 or 3 sentences. I didn't expect this. So here's what he said. He goes, Mitchell, by the way, Mitchell, this is just something to do with marketing. He goes, you are world class at doing something that 98% of your audience doesn't have. And they don't have it because they either think they have it and they don't, or they don't think they need it. Either way, that number sucks. And when you hear that, I'm like, yeah, he's not wrong. So he threw me a lifeline. And that lifeline, I'll tell you what it is in a second. And then the next day I woke up and I found that was my first gift from Ken Cook. My second gift, I woke up the next morning and had it. So here's what he did. He looked me in the eyes. He goes, Mitchell, what can you do for me this minute that will put money in my pocket tomorrow? First words out of my mouth, executive presence.
Yeah.
And executive presence grew into what I now do, which is called executive abundance. And that's part of my executive coaching piece of it. Before we talk about that and switch, what I want to do is tell you the gift I woke up with the following morning.
Please.
This is crazy. I've known this, Elise, I've known this my entire life. And I've essentially ignored it to 7 months ago. Now, every marketer is going to listen to this and go, of course, Mitchell. I have to tell you, I've been in Silicon Valley. I'm a thought leader. I put stuff out there. People buy it. I've lived a really nice life so far. But 7 months ago, I recognized something really important. Okay, here it is. Sell them what they want, deliver what they need.
Yes, you told me that when we first spoke. That I've got that down. It's gold.
So here's the interesting thing. I recognize after 5.5 years, a year worth of research, 3.5 years worth of deploying credibility, a year worth of deploying clarity. After 5.5 years, I realized what I was focusing on was what people need. They need clarity and they need credibility, but that's not what they want. So that's not what they're asking for.
What do they
So
want?
what are they asking for?
Yeah.
Me, if you're a fast-growing CEO, Inc. 5000 CEOs leading the future with executive abundance, you're looking for abundance. And then the other thing I did is I ended up purchasing a LinkedIn agency, and the primary focus there is on business owners. So it's business owners escaping slimy LinkedIn sales tactics. So
hallelujah.
So that's the stuff that people want. They both get the same thing, just in different doses. They both get clarity and credibility.
Okay, so we're going to talk more about that, but let's grab our first break because I do want to dive into the executive abundance next. I am your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. We're on the air with Mitchell Levy. He's a global credibility expert and certified stakeholder-centered coach. We've been talking a bit about where all this work and passion came from. After the break, we're going to get into his newest concept, which is executive abundance, which he's already teed up for us. We'll be right back.
Dr. Elise Cortez is a management consultant specializing in meaning and purpose, an inspirational speaker and author. She helps companies visioneer for greater purpose among stakeholders and develop purpose-inspired leadership and meaning-infused cultures that elevate fulfillment, performance, and commitment within the workforce. To learn more or to invite Elise to speak to your organization, please visit her at elisecortez.com. Let's talk about how to get your employees working on purpose. This is Working on Purpose with Dr. Elise Cortez. To reach our program today or to open a conversation with Elise, send an email to Elise, A-L-I-S-E, at elisecortez.com. Now, back to Working on Purpose.
Thanks for staying with us and welcome back to Working on Purpose. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez, as I am dedicated to helping create a world where organizations thrive because their people thrive, are led by inspirational leaders that help them find and contribute their greatness, and we do business that betters the world. I keep researching and writing my own books. So one of the latest came out. It's called The Great Revitalization, How Activating Meaning and Purpose Can Radically Enliven Your Business. And I wrote it to help leaders understand what today's diverse and demanding workforce really wants from their world of work. And then I give you 22 best practices that you can fold into your culture to provide that for them. You can find my books on Amazon or my personal site, elisecortez.com. Picking up with where we were with our guest, Mitchell Levy. He's the author of more than 60 books, with the next one coming out soon on abundant leadership, which is where we're going next. I love the name of it already. So let's talk about, I think you started to tell us the train of where it began to emerge for you.
Yeah. So executive abundance. I first started with the concept of executive presence. You know, having published 750 books, having been on a ton of stages. I've probably talked been at least 3,000 stages, have helped many of my authors and speakers be successful and CEOs. And I thought, oh, executive presence, that's really cool. But then lots of people are doing executive presence, and that there was a little bit too much ego associated with that. So by the way, all this happened in a 2-week period after Ken Cook sort of slapped me in the face and told me that what I was selling was not something that people wanted. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay. So in a 2-week period, I sort of started switching from executive presence. I went to executive gravitas.
Mm-hmm. I love that word.
That's really cool too. But as I started test driving it with my audience, people I was talking with, I'm like, there's something that doesn't work there. And then ultimately I settled on abundance. And then went to, when I realized it was executive abundance, I went and picked up executiveabundance.com. And I'm like, oh, perfect. It was meant to be. And the first thing I did after making that happen, I started sharing my CPOP with different conference organizers. And the second one I shared it with immediately said, Mitchell, I got a conference coming up. It's called the Purpose Summit.
I know it. Yeah.
Like in 4 or 5 months. And I'm going to basically build a program around you so you could do this. I need to hear more about executive abundance. And what was fascinating was I believe I needed to live in the world of how speakers, like an actor, if you're playing a part, you got to. So as a speaker, I needed to live in that world. To fast forward, the next thing I needed to do is start the writing of my book on executive abundance. And as soon as I got mostly into it, I'm like, yeah, I need to change my dissertation. So I was doing a dissertation research. Research. Sorry. Let's start again. I was doing a research dissertation. And then I realized, you know what? I need to do a capstone project. I need to have that comes out of it. I need to do academic research on this concept of executive abundance. But what I want to come out of it is I want to actually have a blueprint that my clients and other people can use to actually deploy executive abundance inside their companies. And so that's where I'm at now. And I wake up every morning ecstatic. I mean, it is very cool when you wake up and you talk to prospects, you talk to clients, and they go, yeah, I need this. And there's a nice playground. It's a very nice environment, but it's, at least what's interesting, it is not the world we live in today. We live in a world today that primarily is structured around quarterly financial reports.
Right.
So we live in a world called or exemplified by this concept of short-termism.
Yes.
And life can be different. And so that's where I'm right in the midst of my dissertation research. To be able to put some academic grounding around the concept of executive abundance before the book comes out.
Okay, let me comment on one thing before we go any further on ideas, because I want to showcase for our listeners and viewers what we're seeing here, which is a man who is very passionate about what he cares about, and you give yourself over to that. And I think it's so amazing. And I always like to be able to call these things out for our listeners and viewers, because some people listen to the show because they want to see what it looks like to be turned on by life. They're inspired by that. They're looking for hope and connection to that kind of energy. Some people are here because they want to learn what it is that we're talking about and fold that into their businesses. But a lot of people, and I know them because they're in my speaking audiences too. One, they don't know what they're passionate about. When I ask, what are you passionate about 85% of the audience will oftentimes realize when I ask the question, they don't have an answer. So I want to celebrate just how passionate you are, that you just give yourself over to this stuff. And then the second thing I want to put forth is, imagine, ladies and gentlemen, if you could have people in your organization turned on like Mitchell is, and they then give themselves over to whatever it is they really care about, and you get the benefit of a turned on human who's probably going to be out there innovating new products and services for your customers because they care about them and they're connected. So that's what I also wanted to situate and celebrate here what it looks like when a human being is really turned on and unleashed to go after what they really care about. Just what could happen.
And I'm going to add to that. That's what you and I both do, right? And the thing is, in an abundant world, we're not competitors. We're potential partners. We haven't partnered yet with a corporation, but we will, right? And that's what's fascinating is and this is, by the way, this is the one thing that's really difficult to replicate out of Silicon Valley. There have been many geographical areas that have tried to replicate Silicon Valley. And there are three things that make Silicon Valley Silicon Valley. One is the money, right? So you got money to invest. Second is people. So you got good, educated people who are learning and growing and doing new things. And the third, and this is what's hard to replicate, is that even when there are people solving a problem from different companies, they'll still help each other out. Right? Because it's more about solving the problem than it is about one company versus another winning. Right?
I'm sure I did not know that. That is tremendous. I love that. I had Paul Skinner on my podcast on back in 2018. He's become a friend and not been able to get away from me since. But his first book is called Collaborative Advantage. It's the whole idea that we can get much more done when we collaborate than if we compete with each other.
Agreed.
Okay. Well, so where are we taking this executive abundance concept? Where is it going? How is it going to live and grow in the world?
So what I'm doing at the moment is getting a PhD in the concept, and the dissertation will be focused on executive abundance. And we'll see. I have absolutely unrealistic goals of how quickly I'm going to make this happen. Well, and here's the thing. I've got these goals, and if I hit them, holy cow, that's amazing. And if not, I'm not going to beat myself up for it. And as soon as the dissertation is done, and what's happening is I'm going to continue to be writing the executive abundance book. At the same time, I'm creating coursework, and I'll create 2 chatbots, right? So the coursework, the online coursework, is in 2 different flavors. The first flavor is to the CEO, very summarized, very focused, and very much, hey, let's get on the same page. This is this concept of executive abundance. This is what you want your team to have. The second piece of coursework is for everyone else. And everyone else this is the detail that you need to focus on. This is what you should expect from your executive and your executive team. And this is where we're going. This is what we're doing. Right. And so right now it's conceptual because I haven't built that together. But what's nice about today's world, with AI the way it is, with technology the way it is, the ability to create a stream of coursework to make that happen, this is not an insurmountable multi-year plan. This is maybe multi-week, worst case multi-month, but it is something that is, and this is what I agree with you before. If you have a company, you want your employees to go, oh my God, I can make this happen, because all the tools are out there to make it happen. When you have this IT department that's stopping the employees from using the tools because they're not corporate authorized, get a hold of yourself. I mean, I understand there's lawyers and lawsuits and all that stuff, right? They have to worry about, but you need to use the technology that is at your fingertips. If you don't, your competitors will. And if your competitors do, they're going to just really jump past you super quickly.
Absolutely agreed. Completely agreed. And I want to situate a fun little term for you, since you helped us with a few already, and that's this idea of logo philosophy or logotherapy. So one of my degrees is in logo philosophy. And listeners and viewers, if you don't know what that is really the work of Dr. Viktor Frankl, who you might recognize as the author of Man's Search for Meaning and many other books as well, who gave us the field of existential psychology. And so in the world of logophilosophy and logotherapy, what we know is that there's the whole premise is that our main search concern as humans is for meaning, and that we are irreducibly spiritual creatures, and and we're looking for meaning. So the opportunity to ignite that human spirit, to unleash that human spirit, I think is the opportunity that so many organizations are missing out on and squandering because of the way they staple people in seats and restrict them and remove their autonomy and their choice. Now we're down to like a fraction of that human, and which is part of the reason that today the global employee engagement rate is 21%. I don't know how you run a company with that. I don't know how you get anything done with that kind of an employee engagement rate.
Oh, and by the way, if you think that you could fix that by delegating it to if you're the CEO and you think you could fix that by delegating it to some human resource person without giving them the authority to actually make it happen, you're dreaming.
Yeah. Yep. Agreed. Well, speaking of dreaming, let's let our listeners and viewers have just a small little short nap, listeners and viewers, while we take our very last break. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. We've been on the air with Mitchell Levy. He's a global credibility expert and a certified stakeholder-centered coach. We've been talking about his newest concept, executive abundance. After the break, one of the things we're going to talk about is the 4 steps to creating a purpose-driven organization. We'll be right back.
Dr. Elise Cortez is a management consultant specializing in meaning and purpose, an inspirational speaker and author. She helps companies visioneer for greater purpose among stakeholders and develop purpose-inspired leadership and meaning-infused cultures that elevate fulfillment, performance, and commitment within the workforce. To learn more or to invite Elise to speak to your organization, please visit her at elisecortez.com. Let's talk about how to get your employees working on purpose. This is Working on Purpose with Dr. Elise Cortez. To reach our program today or to open a conversation with Elise, send an email to Elise, A-L-I-S-E, at elisecortez.com. Now, back to Working on Purpose.
Thanks for staying with us and welcome back to Working on Purpose. I am your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. As you know by now, this program is dedicated to empowering and inspiring you along your journey to realize more of your potential. If you want to learn how we can work together and learn more about one of the things we do is the Gusto Now Academy for leaders and individuals on various journeys alike, make your way to our site. It's gusto-now.com, and then go to the training tab and you can find out all about what we're doing there. If you are just now joining us, my guest is Mitchell Levy. He's the author of over 60 books, with the next one due out soon on abundant leadership, which is what we were talking about in the last segment. So before we go on, I just want to share with you that I just got a text from one of my team members, Lydia. Lydia, you're a rock star. And she said, I'm loving this show. You guys are great together. So we have one fan.
Hey, it always has to start somewhere.
Yes, it does. We'll take it. Thank you, Lydia. Okay, so I love this because we've queued up purpose a few times in this conversation. Of course, you and I are aligned on how critical and central that really is. Many organizations, of course, as you know, and I know, understand purpose wash. They just sort of banty about a phrase. But I do want to situate. I like to be able to give our listeners and viewers things they can immediately put to use and to work when they listen to this podcast. And you have an article on LinkedIn that talks about these 4 steps to creating a purpose-driven organization. Let's talk about them.
I would love to. Do you mind if we define purpose first?
Let's do it. Go for it.
All right. Oh, and by the way, you in the previous segment, you talked about logotherapy and logo philosophy. So I asked my chatbot what it was, and it's very cool. I will incorporate that most likely in my dissertation. So thank you.
Right on. I'm thrilled to hear that.
Here's the thing. So if you look at the definition of the word purpose, it means so many different things for different people, and also incorporates a religious component to many people. As a matter of fact, if you think about purpose-driven organizations, now we're talking about, organizations that bring God into the company, right? Because that's the purpose. And I want to look at it differently. And so I'm going to encourage you, and even though I said let's define purpose, I'm actually going to define something different than purpose. I'm going to define how you can execute on your purpose, right? And that is different than defining purpose. I might say, well, Mitchell, that's an interesting use of words. Here's the thing, and I'll best thing I could do is give you a story. I've written 65 books. 66 is the most important. It's on executive abundance. I've published 750. And what happens is in the world, by the way, if you could go to you can go to ChatGPT and ask the question, how many people want to write a book? How many actually write the book? How many publish the book? Well, apparently 80% of the population wants to write a book. Only 6 to 12% actually write it, and 0.1% actually publish it, even though there's so many books out, right?
Wow,
So
that's amazing.
So the interesting part is, now one of the reasons they don't write the book, because they've been taught they want to write the great American novel, right? So by the way, if you were just listening to the radio, I had the double quotes on. They want to write the book that is like the book that's the be all end all book that solves all human hunger and whatever it is, right? So what's interesting is when I would work with that author, I'd go, hey, you know what? Let me help you write your second book. Your second book's just going to talk about your philosophy and your approach and how you execute, how you add value to your clients. And they go, okay, I'll write the second book. I'll go back to the first book another point in time. And after we write with them and publish their second book, they sometimes, most of the time, never go back to their first book. And so that's what I want to say about the word purpose. Okay. Purpose is some big thing that means so many different things to different people. What I call a CPOP is your customer point of possibilities. It is where you are executing on your purpose today. It's a vibrational energy. It's when you wake up in the morning, you go, oh my God, I really have to make this happen. And so as a CEO, your job is to have people inside the company who wake up and have a vibrational energy that's in alignment with yours and the philosophy of where the company wants to go. And here's the most important thing. You empower them to be successful to do that. Sorry, I got carried away.
Would you stop apologizing for being passionate? Just stop already.
All right.
It's a requirement to be on the show, by the way. You were fully screened. We're good.
Okay.
Well, so let's talk about, so did you go through all the steps? Because if you did, I want to echo them.
No. So I think I skirted the issue directly. So but
we were defining purpose first, yes, and what it means.
Thank you for
how it
bringing
works.
Back on track. So what I call the 4 steps, which was the article, or a better way to think about it, is the engine of executive abundance is 4 C's. We've already talked about 2 of them. Everything starts with a simple formula, and that's your clarity. Until you have clarity, like people say to me, Mitchell, they send me the book. Is this going to be a good book? My first question, is it a good book for what? What do you want to do with it?
Right.
If I talk to a CEO, hey, here's our purpose statement. Is this a good purpose statement? For what? Right? What do you want to do? Right? And so clarity is the most important. Think about credibility as an operating system. Now, there are 2 other C's that are important in the 4-step process. So it always starts with clarity. And by the way, to be clear, if 98% of companies and humans do not have clarity, there's a lot of opportunity here, because that's the first thing that has to happen.
Right.
Okay. And clarity, once again, should be, where are you executing on your purpose in less than 10 words? Okay. Now, what comes after clarity and credibility is consistency, right? So a lot of times you see people and who they show up as on LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram and X are different people because they have different audiences. So they're changing their personality to focus on different audiences. That's not being consistent.
Right.
Consistency is showing up the same way, whether you're online or in person. By the way, to be clear, whether you're with family or friends or work associates, it's all the same.
Right.
Consistency. Now, all of that is really hard. And so the 4th C is commitment. You need to have the commitment to make it happen even when things get tough. right? And so in the article, I wrote it as 4 steps to make it simple. And it really starts with clarity, and it is really that's the right order. But when you're looking at an engine, all parts of an engine all work together all the time. Because what happens is the world changes.
Mm-hmm.
You may change your CPOP, your clarity statement, because the world's changed. Not only is technology different, but your audience who consumes technology is different, and you need to change your CPOP. Well, how do you do that in a way that still is credible and have the consistency and commitment so that the entire workforce that works with you is on top of that with you?
Okay, so a couple of things. First, let's just describe that as the most appropriate way that I know how to describe that, and that's yummy. That was just yummy.
Yummy is a great technical word.
Isn't it though? It really is. And that's a great belly laugh, by the way. That's an authentic laugh, by the way. So I want to echo something you said about how when the world changes, because people get a little lost, I think, sometimes on this purpose thing, because first and foremost, we have to recognize what you're saying. What's under what you're saying is for something to count as purpose, we have to always be of service to something beyond ourselves. So we're serving something, whether that's a human or a cause or the whales, whatever it is. And so, to your point, this is where I think people get tripped up is as the world does change, that means so can the expression and the living and the function, the featuring of the purpose change as to be able to remain of service or to be of better and higher service to that purpose. And I think that's where part of the reason people get lost. And back on the clarity piece, I do some of the work that we do, Mitchell, when we're working with organizations is to help people do what we call the wildlife scratching process together of gaining that clarity about what is our purpose here. Why do we exist and why should anybody care? What are we actually up to here? And because most of the time, if you ask somebody in an organization, what's the purpose of this company? The first thing they'll either say is, I don't know, or they'll go frantically looking for the sign on the wall someplace that says it, that they have no idea, they're not connected to and can't remember. So I think what you're bringing up is really important to talk about how you need to revisit this stuff. It's not a static statement.
No, and that's why, by the way, having it less than 10 words makes it easy to remember.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, it's just this is so important, and you also said something earlier that I want to go back to too, and that was something about the disconnect in humanity that you are seeing that is so troubling for you. Completely agree. We're aligned on that. And especially inside the world of work. One of the things that I love about what we do when we're helping other companies and how we live in the culture within my company is we want to play life full out. And what we're trying to do is help other organizations to ignite all those souls, those beautiful souls in their organization in a way that works for their overall life. With a recognition that every individual that you have working with you has a rest of his or her life that they bring to work and that comes with them as part of the package of their life and their contribution. And I know that you have that whole way of looking at, the five key stakeholder groups of a human or a person, which include all these different aspects, of course, the family and self, employee, the customers, investors, the community. And then so does the individual have all of those different clusters too. So I want you to talk a little bit more about this, what you're seeing in terms of the absence of humanity, and what is it that you want to do to try to address that?
Mm-hmm. Well, the interesting part is I was under the mistaken understanding that if I came up with an updated definition of the word credibility, all I had to do was share it and people would know what to do with it.
That's funny.
I know, exactly. Well, I was doing a lot of the research happened during COVID timeframe. So I was in this very insular environment. And then when we started sharing it, I'm like, wait a second, people are not reacting. And by the way, as it turns out, I attribute it to the fact that I believe that 10% of the population are do-it-yourselfers. Maybe 10% are done for you. They want to pay somebody else to do it. And 80% are the done with you people. Okay. So when I could share a CPOP, or if I could share the credibility definition, 10% know what to do with it. But that doesn't change the world, right? So And so I was sort of sitting back trying to figure out how can I change the world in such a way that we put a framework out there, a framework that can be used successfully by all parties. And where I'm excited about executive abundance now is that you have to go where the money is. So the money is in corporations, right? So you go to corporations and you go, hey, listen, and I sit on the board of a NASDAQ firm. And one of the things as a board member of a public company, my responsibility was to be my fiduciary responsibility was to the shareholders, right? It was not to the health and family of the CEO and or their staff. It should have been. It's not that we ignored it. It was not to the employees. It was to the shareholders. It was not to the customers. Although if we didn't have customers, we wouldn't be able to, have investors who are happy. It was not to the community. Now, theoretically, we should focus on the bigger picture. And that's what executive abundance is a framework that says, hey, let's not just focus on ROI, return on investment for the shareholders. Let's focus on the family and health of the CEO, the staff, and the employee base. Let's focus on the employees, because if you can empower the employees to be successful, guess what? They're going to make sure that your customers are happy. If your customers are happy, they will make sure your investors are happy. And we all live in a community. And so that's what the focus is. And so doing it in a dissertation format means that other researchers can come behind me and add value to that. So that's one reason for that piece of it. And the reason for it to be a capstone, it needs to be practical, pragmatic, and deployed immediately. And so I do that as part of my practice. Both my executive coaching practice and surprisingly, even my LinkedIn practice are mini versions of executive abundance. And so I'm learning, growing, and deploying today. And so it's got a very practical use. And so it's a lot better than putting out a definition and hoping people use it. Although at the time I thought that was it.
Yes. Well, I can absolutely see the whole stakeholder-centered approach in this. And I certainly absolutely align with that. I wrote that in my last book as well. One of the many reasons I wanted to have you on to talk about this, Mitchell, because I believe in it. I want you to champion this as high from the rooftops as we possibly can. And of course, we're doing our small part too, in the way that we do our work. So it happens every time or sometimes that this goes by so very fast. We're at the end of the show. This show is being listened to by people around the world who care about some of the things we've been talking about in terms of becoming a better leader, a better human, enjoying their work in a more fulfilling way. What would you like to leave them with?
You can wake up every morning and be happy. And you're happy if you can make sure you have financial and spiritual foundation, and you're doing the things that are adding value to your life and to others. If you can be of service to others and make money doing it, you will be happy. And that is not a dream for tomorrow. That should be very actionable in terms of what you do today.
Here. I'm completely with you. I'm just going to call you Brother Mitchell, because that's what this is. Nice. So Mitchell, I'm so delighted to know you and have you in my life. And now you also cannot get away from me. I'm a pretty fast runner, so you're not getting out of my claws. So enjoyed having you on and share with my listeners and viewers. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. My pleasure. By the way, you hinted in the break previously that you had somebody on for like 6 years ago and you haven't let him out of your midst. I was getting goosebumps when I heard that.
Ah, good. Well, I haven't. That's you, Paul Skinner. Okay, so listeners and viewers, if you want to learn more about Mitchell Levy, the work he does, his speaking or his various books, you can start first by his main site, mitchelllevy.com. Let me spell that for you. It's MITCHELL Levy, LEVY.com, mitchelllevy.com. And then you can also go to his new site, executiveabundance.com. Either one, you can check out what he's doing. Last week, if you missed the live show, you can always catch it via recorded podcast. We were on air with Rich Davini, a retired Navy SEAL commander and author of Masters of Uncertainty, the Navy SEAL way to turn stress into success for you and your team. We talked about how his master uncertainty method can help individuals and teams elevate performance and work with our brains throughout the wonders of neuroscience. It was a wickedly interesting and elevating conversation. Next week, we'll be on the air with Tamara Ryan, who spent 22 years as the CEO of the Women's Bean Project in Colorado. And we're going to talk about her new book on followership, which in many ways turns leadership on its head towards something more like servant leadership, but so much more than that. See you then. And together, let's lean in and learn together how to make workplaces that work for everyone and find ways to do business in a way that betters the world. Let's work on purpose.
We hope you've enjoyed this week's program. Be sure to tune into Working on Purpose, featuring your host, Dr. Elise Cortez, each week on W4CY. Together, we'll create a world where business operates conscientiously, leadership inspires impassioned performance, and employees are fulfilled in work that provides the meaning and purpose they crave. See you there. Let's work on purpose.